And how we followed up on that, when we did our ministry assessments, I asked those questions of each area of ministry, and they needed to answer those as part of the ministry assessment so we could understand where we were, where we weren't, what we needed to work on in each area. Each facilitator, small group leader, Bible teacher, no matter who she was, if she was up in front of people, whether she was on the worship team or whatever, she shared a grace story. And most of the discipleship, they wrote their grace stories or their testimonies, because we had that intentionality. When we gave them this testing, we said then, let's check this out. Go be on a worship team. Do something with hospitality, whatever your gift is. Start learning to teach if you want to teach a Bible study, hospitality, whatever it is. Then find your passion. In finding your passion, go be a small group leader for Movi, wherever they want to use it, however they want to take it, which takes them into the next category.
Brian, I think you're onto something there, and that's something that has been in my mind specifically in the last 24 hours, just because I've heard a few different things. Like, I know there's legitimacy to, you know, here's the ideas, this is what we're trying to communicate. If you need to word it a little bit different for a context, like, I understand that. But on the other hand, I wonder how much we need to get back to, if this is what we have decided, these are the outcomes that the chapel is trying to accomplish. It seems like those tweaks should only be when it's necessary, to me. You know what I mean? As far as like I'm just thinking, like, even on the suggested curriculum list for circle groups, I totally could categorize those based on those 4. You know what I mean? I look for them based on that. But I totally could, you know, categorize those this way because this is what we've established. Because if we, you know, if we have, you know, if Thrive has THRIV 6, you know what I mean? And then the chapel has said 4, and then everybody's got different ones. Even if it's the same thing but different terminology, I don't know. It just seems like something
Yeah, and Kenny's not here to defend himself, but I was actually thinking about that the other day. Is that they have 5 faith skills, and I don't know if you could speak to that.
Yeah, it's, the 5 faith skills came out of the orange stuff as well, so that's how the curriculum's set. But I was thinking the exact same thing when he was presenting that, talking about it, to where, you know, you can still use the material. Like, you can use a message and it qualifies in one of the 4 if we're just trying to get people to understand, here's the things that we think are important.
Well, every time we say Thrive, we don't go through that long narration.
Sure.
That's our branding for our leaders and underneath to know that. What helped us to emphasize it to our women, to get our women moving in these areas, was for our leaders and our facilitators to realize that in their own life, in facilitating and equipping and doing that as an example, and have a common thing. And as they discuss things in small groups, they actually started sharing this. But in some of the groups, they're actually writing this out and preparing to do this.
But I just think, like, if you, like, I don't do great under, like, pressure, like, hey, say this. Like, if we're playing Bible trivia or something, you're like, who's the Son of God? I'm like, oh. You know what I mean? I'm like that. So for me, and I do try to think of these things in how I approach everything. And if you said 4 outcomes, I'd go, like, I'd get nervous first of all, and then I'd be able to come up with them. But if we're saying the Thrive is just for leaders, I'm not picking on you, because we've already established a few different ministries that I'm involved with that have the same difference. Why do the leaders even need to remember those 6 things if, when it's all said and done, this is how we've chosen as a ministry, as a team, to communicate those?
Well, let me just, I want to give you an example of this,
Sure.
because I personally, like, I'm gonna give my outside perspective looking in with other churches, which is, at first I resisted a common language for a while, because I thought, I think it's too hard to assume that we could, first off, I was working against the chapel dynamic, which is, you're gonna tell me how to play ball, basically, and I was like, no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But even in our merger with Christ Together, what was really interesting and has been interesting, and what I've really loved about these guys, is as they've partnered with a number of other churches as well, they've just said, what we have been missing is a common strand of language that you all seem to have a better handle on, and that would probably put us in a better position to mobilize on a couple of different fronts. One is working with other churches, but 2 is working with people within our ministry domains. So, and this is what I was talking about earlier, was like, what if, and I don't know if it's unrealistic, but it's just in my head, and I've been working with David on this with Rick Caputi in re-strategizing even how we counsel people. Not that we're throwing biblical counseling out, we're utilizing biblical counseling, but we're consciously bringing up the outcomes throughout the counseling journey. But I think this is what we want to be about, and I think that one of the challenges is, or one of the things that I envision is, what if my family had redundancy in these terms as well? Would it put us in a better position to understand what we're trying to mobilize around? And my thought is, I think it would, but like all things, it's
Sure.
not longitudinal at this point.
Well, and I'm not, like, from our conversations, I'm not someone who,
Yeah.
if you ask me, are these four the things that every church should be about? Well, no, I'm not going to be an evangelist to say this is the only way and this is all that the Bible ever dictates. But it is what we've decided on.
Right.
That currently, that's how we're structuring. So my thing is, if we're establishing language, don't establish multiple languages.
Right.
Let's use the same one. And just because I'm counseling someone and I know in my mind I'm thinking of Christ-like relationships, I don't necessarily have to say that to them. I'm just working on that area with them.
It should be a natural flow of your conversation
Sure.
and your verbal things that you're doing. The reason for, with the intimacy of God for the differing levels, I can expect moms who don't know Jesus to go right into a mom-to-mom Bible study. And meeting people where they are and taking them where they need to go in progression of not only where they are in their own life, but where they are spiritually, gives us a natural application for them to move and to grow and to do this actual thing. The same as youth coming into Vintage after they graduate from high school. Moms is a real entry point from outside, but women now from Vintage who are in their stage of life of now marriage and children wanting to come naturally over, but they're not going to go in with a group of women who have teenagers. They're going to naturally go in the level of where their season of life is, and that's very natural for women to meet them where they are and take them where they need to go, because one size does not fit all, and that's what's been very helpful. Plus the number of women that are here at the chapel of who we want to reach, because I think one of the negatives overall is we have a big back door. We're all striving to get people engaged in a small group, right? And getting them connected and not just walking out on Sunday morning. I don't know about you, but don't we kind of feel that pressure of drawing more youth into youth ministry or more people into Life Links, and that's why we have What Next. The other thing that I think is a negative that we have viewed and observed for these things are the things that women are struggling with here. And they're struggling with their own self-worth, they're struggling with fear, they're struggling with condemnation, they're struggling with maturing from Catholicism, they're struggling from depression, oppression, and suppression. Now I know that's heavy, but those of us that are in counseling, as we have seen when people walk in, we know that those are things that are heavy on people as we work towards them, meeting them where they are, encouraging them, showing them unconditional love, and doing all that kind of things to bring about the outcomes. And that's a process, and that takes time. And maybe that's probably the prophetic spirit of mine coming out as we view and encourage and want to have women who have intimacy with God, Christ-like relationships, gifting and grace, sharing their great stories.
Okay, why don't we do this? With 10 minutes left, let's take a look at missional behavior. And if we run a few minutes over, if you have to leave right at 11, please feel the freedom to do that. If the conversation flows and you want to stay, that's great too. But if you got to go at 11, you got to go. That's totally cool. So let's talk about missional behavior. How within Thrive, when we look at presence, proclamation, saturation, and conversion, what are the things that are, what is the ethos of Thrive within this realm?
I think it's as we observe it, and we're still learning and growing about that, as these things not only are coming here in the DNA, and that is filtered out through their lives and their testimony, along with these things, Alan, it's like a musical movement coming And I love because it's going into the conclusion or the symphony or the end of the musical number of what is happening. All the things, no matter what they're involved in, mentoring, one-on-one relationship, triads, or whatever, is bringing us into a more of a presence of our mission, not only individually, but with others. Does that make sense? Rock the Lakes training with all of this. Many of the women who took the training are already using it with their coworkers and their relatives. I've heard numbers of stories. So we are moving into more of our missional presence of, you're saying, Christ-likeness in movement of reaching others for Christ, every man, woman, and child.
I would say with presence, if MOPS is that high of a percentage of people who do not have faith in Christ, I would say MOPS is a great opportunity for people to be present with those outside, so to speak.
Cornerstone definitely is. And how we're, and Sunrays. Partnering with Sunrays has enabled us, when the women, we had 2 confidential Bible studies here for women who'd had abortions. That worked for a while, but they wanted it more secretive. I can send them to Sunrays, and they're getting help. Cornerstone, some of all these interactions, presence, triads on a missional statement for people. Some of them don't know the Lord, some of them want to grow in the Lord, some of them want to be on a 101. Presence of where we are. Would you consider mission trips of where we're going as we're going into DR and some of those levels of the presence? It's been real interesting to realize more of the people that are coming in to learn about this are now making a decision because they know they don't have the Lord. To me, that is presence. We're doing it outside the building, inside the building. Missional presence, I didn't realize it, but in the leadership training, we have several people that are developing ministries. One of them is in Niagara Falls, trying to reach their community and just wanted more information on how to put things together, how to put a mission statement leader, what is the strategy for some things. And she is impacting Niagara Falls and is going to be able to impact with seminars and getting the okay to do some things publicly. And they said it's okay for her to bring in the spiritual element and share Christ in the Niagara Falls area. Presence. See any negatives? Certainly more to happen.
I think a potential negative for presence, and this is not strictly with you, but because of some of the things we've talked about of being careful not to overdo the number of activities people could be involved in. Like if someone tries to do a triad, if they're already involved in a women's Bible study and a circle group, I think we need to own a little bit of responsibility to at least say to them, hey, for you to actually live in the real world, you're going to need to give something up potentially.
Well, and I think that's very important because the things that we have even listed as outreaches or things that they're involved in, we have such a diverse of where women are and where they want to be that we watch that very carefully because we don't want a woman doing 2 or 3 things. She's doing a triad with her timeout. She knows that's all she can do. We have enough women in giftedness and stuff. We watch overload because that's the reason we cut down. We're not doing a breakaway every year. It's going to be every other year. We're not doing this every year. It's going to be absolutely. And she'll need to find her niche because they are comfortable doing a triad with just 2 people and what they have the time with. Even in the mentoring, how they meet, whether it's usually once a week for 6 months and then they reevaluate. They see if they want to stay together, if they want to move on, or whatever. Because the priority is home and relationships and your own thing too as well.
I had a question in regard to, it kind of bleeds over from here and into here. Is if I might be mistaken, and so if I am, totally help me understand, but it sounds like you have a couple of leadership program tracks where you've mentioned like, hey, it takes 2 to 4 years to get this stuff in order to be released. And so my question is, in the 2 to 4 years, or whatever the time frame is for someone's formation, are within that 2 to 4 years, are these things, it kind of goes to the language thing, but are we, if I were to sit someone down from women's ministry that's gone through these leadership tracks, would they have an understanding of these through those tracks, or not really?
It depends on which track you're on, because one of them pertains to MOPS, getting them interested in going to a Bible study. One of them is leadership that was built within the team for them to become leaders and not followers, and working in their own meeting to have a broader depth and a deeper understanding of their own being, which shores up ministry to be able to do these things because it's coming out of their being as well as they're doing and how they're communicating that. So it depends on what it is, because again, it isn't patterned for, it depends on what you're talking about, leadership or ministry group or whatever, as we have observed this. These, to me, I don't know what you think, don't these run kind of parallel? Communication, do we need to keep communicating? Do we need to keep emphasizing that with the type of that? Absolutely. Have we done that totally here to a satisfactory degree? I don't think so. I think we're still working on this. But all of these things bring about all these things, right? Gifting and reaching out and knowing Christ brings saturation of global things. We have some women at Bank America that are sharing Christ left and right, but they're getting chastised heavily and they've been told not to do it anymore and they'll be fired. I don't know what, but they're trying, which brings conversion.
Linda, you were mentioning that 40% of moms are unsaved. And
that's this year. Next year may be different.
Yeah, when I think of missional behavior and presence, what do you have going on in terms of helping these women when they come to Christ be missional in their own homes when they would probably be the first ones coming to Christ?
What do we have for them? We do offer salvation and a time of understanding salvation several times throughout the year. How it is naturally happening around the table is across and how we are presenting a topic or something by having a DGL or discussion group leader plus an older woman as a mentor to kind to bend that. That hasn't always been the case. It changes every year because it is a faith-based type of outreach that comes in. We've had some salvation decisions by that. We do that solely by relationship building, understand, starting to pray, contagious outreach of lifestyle evangelism as we raise that at the table for them.
To their own families?
And then as they find those things that have been helpful in their children or where they are as young moms, they are taking that. Some of them are coming to be mentors. Some of them are moving then into mom to mom. Some of them have made decisions, some of them haven't. Some of them we would like to move into basic essentials, but we're trying to have that impact in their homes by what we teach in the topics. Absolutely.
That might be a cool interdependence thing, David. Like maybe you can take a look at that, because with regard to the counseling realm, one of the things that you were thinking about is, I want to get someone through their crisis or through their issue, but when they're done, I want them to have an understanding that maybe as their grace story has developed, that grace story could now be a part of counseling another couple, and so maybe that material that she has might be of help for you. You don't have to reinvent it if it's helpful.
The form that we did with the marriage thing with the couples up front, and you came in and we introduced you at the MOPS meeting,
right.
And then some of those women made contact with some of the couples or talked to us, and yes, working on that every year and that changes every year. We do not recycle the same thing every year because it's based on what we see as meeting them where they are and taking them where they need to go. Number of salvation decisions and changes that heal this year. In one class, 10 people praying to Son of Christ. So we have missional outside and we have mission right here in our home. So, thank you for letting me share. We are open as a leadership team to hearing from you and discussing and improving and making changes.
I would say, I just want to add something on the interdependence thing. I heard you say a couple times in here, according to our data, and then this one was really interesting to me. If you ever would like or had questions about wanting to look at that data deeper, I'd love to help in any way that I could. Because I didn't know you were collecting data on this stuff, and it seems really interesting to hear. It'd be fun to take a look at it if it would ever serve.
Well, National Day of Prayer was 250. It's now up to 500 participation in that on that day. It's fun to look at that and keep track of some things because it really helps us decide the next year or even the following year who we have, how we invest, what things we change to keep women moving and growing, because ministry's changing all the time and so are them. And it's changing fast, I think. Just my own personal observation.
Yeah, what David says something that stimulated a thought that I was going to involve Linda and Leroy. You know, I don't know all the details of all the content we're teaching in women's and men's and even in marriage ministry stuff, but what I'm finding is a lot of our teenagers now, you know, I just did a funeral this week of a teenager who's a Christian, both parents not spiritual, and this idea of how you raise kids and what kind of model do you have as home as a mom and a dad. You know, even in my old life, I'm trying to discover it for the first time, and I don't know if we had or come up with some stuff with those ministries that would talk about, you know, how do you raise children, how do you do these kinds of things with your kids, what kind of rhythms you create, because honestly, as a student pastor, I don't feel like because of my age and because I don't have teenagers, sure. I don't want to come in and tell parents, hey, this is how you effectively parent your kids and this is how you raise a spiritual home. They're going to look at me and they're going to look at Kenny, and even have kids, and be like, what do you guys know? But if it came from, you know, higher up with men's or we had something, like we have a marriage ministry, but if we had some kind of track or something, maybe we talked about parenting, I think it would be helpful long haul, because a lot of our teenagers are coming up, they don't have Christian homes, so they wouldn't even know what to do. And we're not teaching it in our student ministry because they don't want them to be thinking about having kids, don't know about having sex, don't think about, you know.
Yeah.
They don't know about that.
A lot of our men and women,
a
lot of our men and women who are raising kids have not come from a Christian home here whatsoever and don't even know how to discipline their children or how to go about it. And the success of having a teenager to love Jesus is what you do when they're 5, 6, 7, 8.
That's what I'm thinking, because if we had something collectively,
yeah,
some kind of track or something, that would be great.
I think it'd be a great thing to see those ministries come together and not to try to reformulate the direction or the track, but just, you know, I think about assimilation, I guess. Like if and when someone within the family unit, it could be a child, it could be a mom, it could be a dad, it could be a grandparent, we all have a domain in some capacity with one of those individuals. And like what I think about is, if one individual in that family unit comes to know Jesus, do we have a common ethos in our church to say, how do we help that member of that unit think about that family to be the evangelist or to be the evangelization person, you know, because that hints at repeated, you know, I don't know if that makes sense, but I see a lot of value in that because, you know, it's like, man, we acknowledge it, and I think it could be a big win for us as we progress down this, because, you know, it takes time to do these things. But
can I share one thing? For a while, while teaching discipline and some of those things to moms and how to do interact and how to structure her home, or what it means to be a godly mother in her home with her children, applying application for how to discipline your child is necessary somewhat to do that. What we have found is to teach them in their own relationship with Jesus Christ, their own transformation of biblical principles and application have naturally then been an outflow of how they will do that with their children by maturing the adult, not only in their relationship and their own transformation, mind, body, and soul, even dealing with some things in the past, helps them then to automatically be equipped to discipline, plus have those practical applications. Well, what do I do with a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old?
I think both are needed, because if I
Yes.
look at culture, I see the nanny on TV, well, I don't watch it, but like the nanny, everything else is about timeouts and stuff, I read the Bible about the rod, so it's like, get out the rod, but, what is the rod? Is it the arm, is it for you, that kid? I just think it'd be some cool stuff.
That's been a
Right.
hot discussion in our moms group, is whether to spank or not, and
Well, that's what I'm saying, those
timeouts
would
and
be
things,
some
and the
good things.
biblical application of those things. And we have some very good biblically, Laura Lewis is absolutely wonderful as a teacher when it comes to that sort of thing, so.
Well, thank you, Linda.
All
Appreciate
right.
walking through that. I'll send you a video copy and then,
Okay.
but thanks
And
so
then
much,
I'll
gang.
do it over again. No. Thank you for listening about me.